The next thing we're going to take a look at, Master Duel, after the Worlds Qualifier, has just received a Forbidden and Limited List update, and this did come out a couple of days ago, but I actually have not looked at it yet. I wasn't really that active in the last couple of days. I was just like, you know, it was hot. I was just laying around, and there's a Master Duel Forbidden and Limited List update, so let's take a look at it. All right. TG Hyper Librarian going from 1 to 3. I think this doesn't matter because usually this is a card that you summon once and then you spam a bunch of synchros and then you draw some cards. So this is just decluttering of the ban list, whatever. I don't really think it matters. Then we have a Cool Tune Rico Semi-Limit. Okay, that is just a consistency hit basically for Cool Tune. Fair enough. Super polymerization going from 3 to 2. This is an interesting topic, I suppose. I know some people are going to be very happy about this. I personally don't know how I feel about super polymerization in the modern game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I do think it is a very, very good card, but I also do think it is, like, I'm just a fan of board breakers over hand traps. So whenever board breakers like super poly are good enough, to me personally, I tend to think that that's a good thing. When you have other options than just playing hand traps. But I do think Super Poly, specifically in the context of Branded, was a really, really powerful card. So I can absolutely, I can get behind it. I can get behind it. I'm not sure if I would have done it myself, but I'm also not against it, if that makes sense. Like if I was in control of this ban list, I think I wouldn't have put it here, but I can accept the fact that they thought it was a good hit, and I think that's fair. Cool Tune Mix also going from 3 to 2. They're doing the thing, the Cool Tune, that they always do when they are not ready to really kill a deck or anything like that, or meaningfully impact how it plays. They're just giving us some consistency hits to this. This one is probably the funnier one between the two, because Cool Tune Mix was already a card that a lot of people played at 2. A lot of people also played it at 3, but it was already a debate whether you should play 2 or 3 copies. So it's like, okay, well, I mean, now you're gonna play 2, but none of this really affects Cool Tune that much. Rico is the more meaningful hit because it's the better one-card starter. Yeah. Okay. All right. We have Rotary to 1 as well next to those hits. This is a lot of stuff doing. Oh, this is full changes. Okay, this is it. It's a lot of hits to Cool Tune specifically, which I think is good because Cool Tune was the most dominant I think a deck has ever been in a Duelist Cup, is what someone said in chat earlier. I played against so much Cool Tune this weekend. And even, I mean, I don't hate Cool Tune. I don't love Cool Tune. I'm kind of indifferent on Cool Tune. I'm not a big fan of like the hand trap deck playstyle. And playing against hand traps when you're going second and your opponent makes a board and then has like 3 non-engine in hand that also negate your stuff is not something I like. But Cool Tune itself, I don't think is the biggest offender in this. I think a lot of other decks worked in similar ways, and I didn't enjoy going second against those as well, like Pure Yummy or something like that. Like Pure Yummy, the board was fine, but the hand traps were annoying. And it's kind of the same way I feel about Cool Tune, is like, I think an end board of like Remix plus KTS plus Zaylin or something is something I could deal with. But then they also have 20 hand traps in their deck, and then I'm starting to get annoyed at it. Limiting Rotary, I think, is good. Now, this happened in the OCG, and I looked at the OCG ban list over the course of the Worlds Qualifier weekend. And when that happened, I said, like, okay, this is a hit to consistency somewhat. It's also a hit to the follow-up for the deck, because sometimes you really want a second Rotary in hand on turn 2. You can add it back from the grave, but then you have to add it instead of adding something else. And then some people in the comments of that video said, like, well, it's also a big nerf for Cool Tune when it goes second, because when you go second with Cool Tune, having the Rotary hard draw in your hand gives you a second normal summon, which makes you push into boards significantly better, which is true. That is something that I didn't talk about when I talked about the limit in the OCG. So having less copies of Rotary does make it harder to go second with Cool Tune. You know, personally, I think it's one of those weird situations where I don't really know how else they are supposed to hit Cool Tune. I think an interesting way could have been, like, because you guys know I'm not the biggest fan of hits that are mostly consistency hits, right? Like a semi-limit to Mix and a semi-limit to Rico is like, okay, well, I mean, if Cool Tune goes first, it's still going to try to do the exact same thing as before. And it's just slightly less consistent at it. Yeah, like sometimes you're going to hand trap it once, or they're going to pass, or they're not going to have a starter in the first place. And it's like, okay, well, is that gameplay really what I want from Cool Tune? And like the answer to me personally is no. Like I don't want decks to be just less consistent but still do the same thing as they did before. It's the same thing that happened to Malice. And so I didn't expect it to go any other way, but it's the exact same thing that happened with Malice. Malice is technically pretty much at full power in Master Duel, and if it ever does get to go full combo, you are still fucked if you go up against Malice. It's just less consistent, and sometimes it's more vulnerable to certain interruptions, which is a good thing. But ultimately, still, I think in general, it's better if you can meaningfully just let the deck be consistent, but let it do less, right? Something that you could do, for example, for Cool Tune is limit a card like Cool Tune Synchro, right? Cool Tune Synchro is a card that often, because it's one of your starters and it is twice per turn, very often people want to run through multiple copies of Cool Tune Synchro in 1 or 2 turns, right? They want to use it on the first turn to dodge cards like Imperm or Veiler or other removal, or even just as a starter to get going. And then they also want to search 1 or 2 copies as backup for the opponent's turn, right? One of Cool Tune's main interruptions is Cool Tune Synchro. It's in that way kind of like Mitsurugi Prayers, which is a card that you always want to use on the first turn, but you also always want to have it set on the first turn as interruption for the opponent's turn, right? Which is why limiting Prayers was a very, very meaningful hit to Mitsurugi that was way beyond just the consistency. And I think the card to look at for Cool Tune would have been Cool Tune Synchro. So I would have taken a Cool Tune Synchro limit over this because it would have significantly impacted the ceiling of the deck, basically, rather than just its consistency. So, yeah. But it's not what I expected to happen. You know, I expected something much closer to this personally. This is just how Master Duel usually handles things. I feel like one of Master Duel's core concepts is that they never really try to hit decks too hard. They never try to hit decks properly, in a sense, because they want people to be able to still play the decks that they spent their gems on. So this by no means does it kill Cool Tune. It just makes it slightly less consistent and slightly worse going second, and sometimes worse in the long game. It also makes Pot of Desires, which was a very, very popular card in Cool Tune this weekend, or this past weekend, a lot harder to use in Cool Tune, because you now have a chance to lose your 1 of Rotary, or sometimes even your 2 of Mix or 2 of Rico when you activate Pot of Desires, which means you're gonna see it a lot less in Cool Tune, which is also a nerf, right? Because Pot of Desires could have been one of the more convenient ways to make up for the consistency losses of 2 Rico, 2 Mix, but with the limit of Rotary, I think it makes it very hard to play Pot of Desires. So, yeah. Now, here's the thing. Am I unhappy about this ban list? Not really. Because, I mean, Cool Tune is the deck that they needed to hit the most, for sure. So I'm happy they did that. I do still think there's a lot of other things that they could have done or should have done. And it's like a little disappointing, because this is usually the one after the Worlds Qualifier or after the Duelist Cup is like the one where they do tend to go a little bit bigger. At least if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong. But I always thought like, okay, the ones after the tournaments, after the Duelist Cup, after the Worlds Qualifier is like the bigger one. Or is that the next one? It's usually the one the month after. Okay, right. All right, then I guess we'll wait for next month. We'll wait for next month to really talk about that. But there's a lot of things. I mean, look, it's starting from cards like Max C or Cult by the Grave, which are the ones that I obviously want out of the game, to just some generic extra deck cards that I'm honestly at this point, I don't think Master Duel is ever going to ban them, but I keep going to be mad about them. Like Baron the Fleur or something like that, which still, like every single Duelist Cup, it does not matter what the format is. It literally does not matter what the format is. every single Duelist Cup, you go up against some crazy combo decks that do some insane things that I sit across from, and I just wonder, like, how the hell is this allowed? Like, the freaking Magnet Warrior this time around, like Magnet Warrior doing the craziest shit imaginable, ending on like Baron the Fleur, Naturia Beast, Fossil Dyna, the Counter Trap, and all of this is in one combo, and it's absolutely absurd. And every time it happens, it just blows my mind that all of these cards are allowed when like literally like half of these endboards, or more than half of these endboards, are banned in the TCG. And Magnet Warrior is still a fine deck, by the way, in the TCG. Like Magnet Warrior is still, or was for a long time, a completely viable strategy without all of those cards, but still ended up needing all of that in Master Duel apparently. But yeah, we're gonna save all that, I suppose, for next month, because if next month is supposed to be the big one, then I do have some expectations, as always, for Master Duel. But yeah, it's fine. It's just, dude, I can't help it, but these days I just put Master Duel to a different standard than the TCG. Like if there's a mediocre TCG ban list happening, I'm genuinely upset about it, because I do know they can do better, and I do want them to do better, and I genuinely care. And for Master Duel, it's just like, dude, I know they're just doing whatever. I don't have that much of a what's it called, of a, like, the bar for the Master Duel ban list is just really, really low, me personally. It's just how I feel about it. But this one's fine, I guess. Lower than OCG? I mean, I genuinely do think, as much as I make fun of the OCG ban list, the OCG ban list is still a couple notches above the Master Duel ban list. Yeah, because at least, here's the thing, right? There's a lot of things on the OCG ban list that I don't agree with, like the fact that they still have a lot of those powerful generic extra deck cards, like Baron and so on and so forth. But they also have one thing that I desperately want that we don't even have in the TCG, which is, in the OCG, they did put some very, very impactful hits on some non-engine that is still running rampant in the TCG and in Master Duel. Like the fact that they actually started hitting cards more aggressively there for non-engine is something that I would really love in the TCG. And ironically think that this year's World Championship is probably going to have one of the best formats maybe ever, because combining the two ban lists is so good. Like the aggressive hits on extra deck cards and engine pieces and floodgates that the TCG has, if you combine those with the non-engine hits in the OCG, I think you get something really cool. So like they have no more Called by the Grave in the OCG now, which is freaking awesome. And you might think, oh, how big of a difference does a one of make? How big of a deal is it really if it's just one Called by the Grave? But like, play Master Duel and tell me how much of a difference one Max C makes over the course of multiple games. It's crazy. Like if it's a one of in every single deck, that does make a huge difference. Because both players have access to it, you know, every time one player is going first and has a certain chance of opening that card to just ruin the game, right? And it's something that, like, it really can't be underestimated how big of a deal it is to finally get rid of a toxic one-of like that. And so the OCG has gotten rid of Called by the Grave. They have a reduced number of Droll and Lockbirds, because Droll and Lockbird is limited for them rather than semi-limited in the TCG, which means that the chance of a game being impacted by Droll and Lockbird negatively is basically half in the OCG, because they got half of the amount of Droll and Lockbirds than the TCG, which I think is also a big deal. They have one less Ash Blossom, which I think is awesome. And they have even less copies of something like Dominus Impulse, which is probably the next best non-engine in line. So the fact that they have those hits, I think, is a big deal. I think that's awesome for the OCG. And so basically, the way I look at it currently is TCG has the best hits for floodgates and generic endboard pieces. They've been doing the best with that. TCG also has significantly better pacing, and or just in general, they often hit decks earlier than the OCG, right? This is something that at the moment, I think objectively true. Like for example, the OCG is just always lagging behind. They always let the deck be absolutely the best in the format for a long time, like Cool Tune, and then they hit it very late when the new best deck is already there. In the TCG, we get these hits in a more timely fashion. Like we got hits to Cool Tune before it became the best deck. They already limited Synchro Overtake and got rid of the Naturia Rosewhip card before it was a problem, basically, and that's good. So that's what TCG has going on for it, but TCG has been, in my opinion, slacking a lot on hitting non-engine. Like TCG just doesn't really properly hit non-engine, in my opinion. And I don't know what the reason for that is, but I think they should. And then that's what the OCG has, right? They got bad engine hits, bad extra deck hits, but they got good non-engine hits. And unfortunately, Master Duel has the worst of both worlds, because Master Duel just has neither. Master Duel is just the crazy place where everyone can do whatever they want, essentially, right? Yeah. At least that's how I feel about it. I think it's completely fine to disagree on this and just like prefer certain things, like how they're going in Master Duel. Like, for example, Master Duel, and this is true, there are more decks in a best of one high roll environment where you can just do anything you want. There are more decks that are viable, and I can see for some people that being an advantage because their favorite like pet deck is more viable in Master Duel because, you know, you can just high roll the better decks with those high impact cards and just go winning the coin toss. So as a competitive player, where my main focus is how good is the game competitively, I think that's not that good. But if someone is looking at it from a different perspective, I think that's completely fine.